Hi folks, in this tutorial we are going to cover what a CB radio is, what you need to get set up, whether this is the mobile or a home base solution. Now I'm only going to be dealing with CB radio, as amateur radio is a bit more involved. It requires exams and sitting the test. We're going to leave that for now and we'll do amateur radio another time. We'll do another tutorial for that. Now CB radio on the other hand does not need a license. This was abolished in 1998. You are free to buy a CB radio anytime. However, knowing what to buy and how to use it is important. It's not like buying a DVD player. There's a bit more involved, which I will go into in this tutorial. From a prepping point of view, if we happen to get hit by a CME, which were overdue, now this did happen in 1959 and this was called the Carrington Effect. Now the satellites could also get affected and be wiped out along with electricity substations, so there'll be no way to communicate via mobile phone or internet. It could be an EMP causing a grid down situation, so as a prepper it's better to have and not need it than need it and not have it. An EMP could affect all electronics, but then it might not. It will depend on what part of the earth gets hit first. The benefit of CB radio is that although it has limited range depending on your setup, it does not rely on a communications network to speak to other CB radio users like mobile phones do. So let's get started. We will be talking about two options that you can have: a mobile CB radio setup and a home-based CB radio setup. So let's start with the mobile setup first. If you're going to set up a CB radio in your car, you will need the following items: a CB radio antenna, and a cigarette lighter adapter. Now there are all types of antennas and CB radios that you can buy. In this picture we're using an antenna called a Springer antenna, which is a mobile antenna with a magnetic mount. It sticks to your roof via the magnetic mount and you just run the cable into your car. The middle of the car roof is the best location for an antenna, a mobile CB antenna. If you don't want to get it robbed, you can remove the antenna and pop it in your car. That's the benefit of having a mag mount. The CB radio that we have in the picture here is called a TCB TTI 881 and is a bog standard AM FM radio. This CB has a built-in PA system option, so you can plug in an external speaker and use the CB radio as a low-powered PA system. Now what we have in front of us here is not a TTI TCB 881. It's just a bog standard CB Master 400 CB radio. Now CB radios come in all different sizes. Some of them have a lot more channels and some of them have a lot more power. Depending on how much money you have and what you want to buy will depend on what you get. So here's a bog standard CB radio. You have your microphone. Now also on this CB radio here, I'll just bring it a bit closer to the camera. You will see that it has up and down, and that's for the channels. And it also has a channel 9 button. Now years ago in the 80s, channel 9 was for emergencies, and I believe maybe in the US they still have it as channel 9 as an emergency. Even if you called out on channel 9 now to CB radio, I doubt anybody would hear you or probably be able to pick you up. But in the 80s, channel 9 was actually monitored, which is very good. But so it's more of a novelty thing now than anything else. Then you have your volume control, turn your volume up and down, and then you have your squelch control. Now what happens is that when you turn on the radio, it's very noisy, and that hissing noise can get very irritating after a while. So if the station is very close to you, what you do is you turn up the squelch and the hissing noise is gone. Now that's only if the station is close to you. If the station is far away, then obviously you have to turn down the squelch. Now I'll just turn around the back of here, and what you have on the back is your power, which goes to your transformer, and then you have your antenna lead that plugs in there. So if we just put that on, turn up the squelch. So you have your channel button, which you can go up and down. There's your channel button, and go down. And then you have your signal. And if you key up, you can tell when a station comes in how strong the signal is. And we will do a test later on with this radio, and we'll talk about it. Now, in the 1980s, the calling channel was channel 11. So if we go up to channel 11, so if you wanted to meet your friends or speak to somebody, you'd go to channel 11 and you'd call out on channel 11, and then if you found your friend or you found somebody you talk to, then what you'd do is you'd say, let's go to channel 15 or whatever channel, because you have 40 channels to choose from. So say you went up to channel 15 and you said hello to the person there in channel 15. You could chat away as long as nobody's on the channel. If somebody's on the channel, it's good etiquette and good manners to move off to another channel that's not taken. Now, because of CB radio, people still using CB radio, but it's not as busy as it was in the 80s. Generally, the channels would be fairly free, so you should be okay. So, now the other channel that people are familiar with is channel 19, and the truckers use channel 19, and they still use it today. Going up and down, they'll talk to each other on channel 19 and do a call out, and that's their own kind of channel. Truckers don't really tend to speak to people in cars, they just tend to speak to other truckers, so just be aware of that. Anyway, now in the 80s, when you called out, everybody had what was called a handle, and it could have been like Smokey and the Bandit, where one guy was called Smokey, the other guy was called Bandit, and basically you had a handle and the person would call out your handle, and if you hear somebody calling you, you'd answer them and then go to a channel. And it was all pretty good. Nowadays, people don't really have handles, they just use their first name, and you tend to know who you want to speak to now on CB radios anyway. So that's really the CB radio. We'll give it a test later on, and we will have a bit of fun with that, and we'll give it a try. So we'll just switch that off for now. Right, the next thing we're going to talk about is home base antennas. In the home base antenna setup, it's a bit more complicated, a bit more involved. The principles are the same. You need a CB radio, you need a power supply. The power supply is called a transformer, and it acts like a car battery. And you need an antenna. But you'll also need wall brackets, clamps, antenna pole, and 50 ohm coaxial cable to connect your home base CB antenna to your CB radio. So let's start off with the list of things you need for a home base setup. So as I said, you need a CB radio, you need a transformer, and a transformer, as I say, acts like a car battery and gives power to the CB radio. Now, there are all types of transformers with different power levels, so you have to make sure that you match up the transformer with your CB radio. There's no point in getting a high-powered CB radio and connecting it to a low-powered transformer. You'll end up damaging or blowing the transformer, so you have to keep that in mind. Then you'll have a home base antenna, an antenna pole, wall brackets, antenna clamps to clamp the antenna to the pole, and 50 ohm coaxial cable to run from the antenna to the CB radio. A home base antenna is designed specifically for your home. Yes, you can use mobile antenna, but we do not recommend it. So we won't go into the science of this and why it's a bad idea. Anyway, a home base antenna is better to have regarding the distance, and you'll get much further with a home base antenna than using a mobile antenna in your house. The antenna that we have in this diagram is called an Antron 99, which is the one that I use, and it's a fairly cheap, popular antenna. Once you get it up, you don't have to do anything else with it. The rule of thumb is, the higher the antenna, the further the distance you can transmit. So you need to get the antenna as high as you can. When you decide the location, you need to fit the antenna brackets onto the wall. Then you need the metal pole, either a 2-inch or 1.5 inch diameter pole will do. And a maximum pole length of 10 feet is recommended, as if you have a pole that's any longer, you'll need to secure it with guy ropes, and it starts getting messy after that. So try and stick to a maximum of a 10-foot pole. And then you mount your antenna to the pole and then fit the pole to the brackets. Then you need to get a length of coaxial cable. What we recommend is the RG213 cable, which you connect to your home base antenna, and that needs to be run to the radio. Always allow for a few extra feet, as you might need to run the cable nice and neat and running around corners and bends and stuff like that. You screw your antenna cable to the back of your CB radio and wire your CB radio to the transformer. Always double check everything before you power up to make sure that everything's done right. If everything's okay, you are good to go. If you know someone else who has a CB radio and they're close to you, see if you can pick them up and ask them how you sound and how strong your signal is and how are they receiving you. And you can tell that by the needle. Sometimes with CB radios you have a needle or you have a little LED display, and obviously the stronger the signal, the more lights that shine up or the higher the needle will be. So you can actually do that. Now obviously the one thing that you can do as well is that if your friend has a car, they can start driving away from you, and then you can get an idea how far you're actually transmitting to mobile units. If you're transmitting from a house to a house, then obviously your distance will be further because the home base setups are much better than the mobile setups. This is not going to be a comprehensive tutorial in any way, but it's just touching base on the CB radio for beginners. Now the one thing that is important that you do as well, if you have the money to get it, is to do what's called an SWR, and that's making sure your antenna is tuned into your radio. Now you can buy an SWR meter to do this. The lower the SWR, the better the performance. Modern antennas tend to have a preset SWR of 1.5 and below. 1.1 is a good SWR. So if you don't have a meter, it's not the end of the world. Most antennas are preset, so you should be okay. You might also need to find out how to solder the antenna connectors called PL259s onto the coaxial cable. There are loads of YouTube videos on how to do this. If you're not confident in soldering, ask a competent person. One last thing. If you're planning on buying a CB radio equipment, please make sure that you buy it from a company who can advise you. There's no point going to Maplin's and buying one of the radios there and assuming that the staff know what they're talking about. A lot of these shops like Maplin's are box shifters. They'll sell you the equipment, but you won't actually know much about the equipment itself. You need to buy the equipment off a company that specialises in CB radio, and because you might need to know a bit more about the radio. Now they might be a little bit more expensive than the likes of Maplin's, but at least you'll be able to get good advice from people who know what they're talking about. So that's very important to make sure that you do that. Hi folks, we're just doing another test here, and as I said, we're going to try the CB and see what it sounds like and see if we can get anybody on channel 11. So we'll just give a call out there. Is anybody on channel 11 there? Come back.
Yeah, go ahead there, go ahead.
Yeah, is that you, Steve?
Yeah.
Good stuff. Alright, let's take it to channel 15.
Okay, channel 15, going now.
Now as Steve is coming in quite loud, I can turn up the squelch to stop that static noise coming in. Okay, Steve, are you there?
Yeah, Alan, good copy of you there, yeah, go ahead.
Great stuff. Okay, well that's brilliant, Steve. I just wanted to show the people how the CB works and what happens there. That's brilliant. You're coming in nice and loud this end anyway. I can hear you very clear there. Over.
Yeah, good stuff, good stuff. Yeah, you're throwing a fantastic signal back to me here as well. I think we're only about 10 kilometers in the distance, but yeah, fantastic signal. Audio is Q5 there, and radio 10 over 9. Over, back to you.
Alright, cheers Steve. Alright, I'll let you go. I'll give you a call back shortly. 73s for now. Take care. Bye bye.
Okay, 73s. We'll catch you later. Take care. Bye bye.
So there you go, folks. There's a bit of fun with CB radio. If you have a few friends in the local area, you can talk to them for as long as you want, and there's no call-up charges, there's no network fees, there's no top-up fees. The benefits of CB radio, cheap and cheerful. Now if you have any questions regarding this video or any queries, please contact us on info@oymradio.com. Thanks for tuning in.